This is an organization I've worked with over the years called Lioness Magazine. And it's a enterprise initially set up by two women from Springfield, Massachusetts, initially designed to do no more than help women in business in our region. And it's become a national entity, and it's got all kinds of things about where to invest and how to be a successful business, but it's with a purpose. And the founders of this magazine and the points that they like to highlight are entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship with a social consciousness. That doesn't mean that everything that they do solves all the world's problems. They certainly do work to close the wealth gap between people of color and Caucasians, and they close the wealth gap between men and women. And that's a big issue for them, obviously. But it's wonderful that this can be a successful business. And that's the kind of business that I think we're talking about these past couple of weeks. We're talking about how to be entrepreneurial and still have some social content. So there we are, bringing it all together. What does that mean? And by the way, this is going to be a very short introduction because you're going to end up doing more of the work. But here's part of the stuff that we've talked about and you've been encountering over the last several days, the last few weeks. We've looked at how national and international economics, social, society, culture, history, the environment, government, and public policy, how all these forces come together to create different kinds of opportunities, but also certain kinds of barriers. Like that intersection between economics and government policy and history, for example, has done a lot to create disparities and inequalities. So when you go back and you listen to Eva Paus's presentation, for example, it's in that intersection between those three things. And you heard about the US Constitution and some of its limits and some of the ways in which it institutionalized or created structural racism. So government, public policy affecting other people's opportunities. So these are the kinds of issues we've been going through for the past 3 weeks. Again, disparities, regulations, rules, environmental impacts. I have a little note here you see on this slide, see knowledge base for entrepreneurs. That's a note for myself, but I just wanted to share briefly with you. This is part of my course that I teach at Mount Holyoke College. And we go through this in great detail about entrepreneurial activities and how they intersect with the stuff that I was just showing you and the things that you've been studying this past week. So here's the thing. It creates problems. We see all these problems and all these issues. And as entrepreneurs, what you see is every time there's a problem or a challenge, that means there is an opportunity for a solution, for innovation, for change. So problems somehow give birth to opportunities if you know what to do with them. And so my question to you is, after the last couple of weeks, what is an opportunity? Who gets it? What do they do with it? How does an opportunity become useful to us in any sort of way? So what do you think? What is an opportunity? Do you have opportunities where you live and work to make things happen the way you would like them to happen? And what are the elements of those opportunities?
An opportunity is like a chance to change the status quo of things, of how things work till that moment.
And what what makes the chance useful? What has to be part of, what are the things that are in an opportunity that would allow you to do something? Yes, I see a hand up.
A choice. The opportunity is the ability to choose something or a path.
Okay, so an opportunity means that you've got options. You have you get to make choices. That's a key thing. So remember that. That's one key point. Yeah, Anna, another hand up.
Notice something, because a lot of times you have the opportunity to do something. You have the choices, like the way and the resources to do something, but you did not notice that you could do that. So see, the problem is also part of the opportunity. Being in the right place, in the right moment, and like the right person in the right place in the right moment.
So do you have, if you're in the right place at the right moment and you have choice, do you have any kind of moral obligation to do something with that? What do you think? Not everybody has opportunities, right? We've heard lots of presentations over the past few weeks about the inequalities and disparities and structures that keep people from having opportunity. So what happens if you have opportunity?
I think we have the obligation to create more opportunities for others, to create more paths or more life paths for people to choose between.
Okay, so what do you do if there are limits that are set forth in something as serious as a constitution? What do you do about that? What do you think?
I can think of many things, but they are small things, or kind of small. Like if you have like a constitution that is rooted in racism, you can maybe vote for people that will, I don't know, like interpret the constitution in another way, or in a way that is valuable to you, and that it's not in favor of racism, for example. So voting and using your political right and civil right of voting to choose someone that represents your values.
Okay, so getting very involved in the political process to bring about some change. What other things could you do?
I believe that we don't have to try to change the system from one day to another when we have people close to us that maybe need our help. So we can start from that and then try to move forward.
Okay, well, I want you to all be thinking about these questions. You know, what does it mean to have opportunity? And if you have opportunity, what do you do with it in order to address the challenges and issues that we've heard about for the last few weeks? Because I'm going to come back to that question. And then the next big questions that I have for you are these two. So now that you've gone through the past these 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you're still working on your projects, how would you describe and explain what you now learned, what you now know, and how would you teach this to other people? What are the things you would want to tell them? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to divide you into random breakout rooms. Once again, that's my method, right? You know that I do that all the time. So we're going to create 5 rooms and have you talk about these 3 issues. What is an opportunity? How would you describe what you now know as a result of the past 3 weeks? And how would you teach others about social entrepreneurship and about the challenges that you've learned about? Now, the reason I'm posing these questions is that the theory of education, primary theory, is that you really know something when you can teach it to others and when you can describe it to others. So this is a test. Let's see what you know. What do you know about opportunity? What do you know about the world? What do you know about teaching others about problems and solutions? So I'm going to ask, I'm hoping that Katie is still here. Yes, I see Katie smiling. So Katie, could you set up 5 rooms for them, and or should I do that? No, I can't do that. Okay, so I want to hear what you've come up with. Like, what do you think about opportunities, and what do you think your obligations might be? And I want to know how you would teach this. What is it that you would tell others? And we can go group by group. So I open the floor. Who would like to go first? Okay, Anna, you're up.
Well, with my team, I really like the definition of opportunity that we have discussed all together. Like, and what do I mean? We believe that a person has a choice to change something. That's the opportunity. But it's not just the option. The person has to have the knowledge and notice how to change it. Because sometimes you have the choice, you have all the resources, and you do not notice. That's something that we really do emphasis in, because we all have opportunities to do things. We have the choices, but none of us notice all those opportunities that we have to create companies or business or study things or teach people things. We had no idea that we could do that, and now we have, of course, and we like this open our eyes. Then we also think that the people that has these opportunities do not have just the knowledge. They have the privilege to have more paths. That's what we talk when we said that the people that has this privilege should give the voice to the people that don't, like the allies. And because without all of us together, the people that has this privilege and the people that has it, we could not make stop these oppressions that exist in our world and these inequalities. And when we think about who has these opportunities and who act with them, we define that some people act, some people use them, and some other people don't. And we really think that it is a moral obligation. Once you notice, do something. But we really think that if someone do not do anything, it's because maybe they have to choose, because sometimes you can fight for a lot of things and do a lot of things, and you have to choose just one because of, well, time more than anything. And then what is that we know now about the world? We know that we live in an oppression relations. The world is constructed and based on them, and a lot of inequalities and a lot of biases that people have and sometimes do not even notice. That's something that we really talked. And finally, we also think that this world is mixed up with people that want to change the world that we have today, and that has that power. So we are really hopeful that that change to a more equal world will happen. And how will we teach this? Well, first of all, we think that it's crucial to teach intersectionality, and so that people can acknowledge their own privileges with other people, that has with other people, and also acknowledge that people has a lot of things going on, not just one thing. People is not just part of one group. And we also would love to teach to see these opportunities to change this status quo. That is what we noticed at first, that people had the choices, but do not know they had those choices or do not know the problem. So we think that it's super important to teach to know these opportunities. And we think that a good tool to do that, for example, to recognize privilege and biases, is the test of Harvard that sent us Katie O'Brien, and the one you have to choose like left or right when you are talking about something. We really love that. We also think about workshops that talks about all the systems that we saw in this course, and maybe doing small debates in the schools between the people, just as something similar as we did. So you can investigate, but not just one point. You investigate about all the points, and you also learn tools to express yourself. We really like that idea, maybe, and it's good for other people. Something really funny to do, and something that catch your attention. And that's to summarize a little bit all the things that we were talking.
So tell me, or tell us again, who has the opportunity? Who is it that has opportunity?
A
Could you-
person?
Identify some group or the type of person who has opportunities to do things. Who has opportunities to be entrepreneurs, for example?
We think that it's the people that has some time of privilege and also the knowledge to notice what's happening, which is that opportunity that the person has, because without the knowledge, you have no opportunity at all.
So people with knowledge and people with some privilege, meaning they have some resources at their disposal to put toward their project. Okay, so now let me ask you all, do you have any questions for that team, or anything you would add to that team? Or let's hear from another team then.
I can go next. I think that we also agree with the definition of opportunity that Anna was saying. I think it's deeply related to privilege, and I think it's also really connected to the concept of equity that we saw, because I think that everybody has opportunities, but different kind of opportunities, and the idea of trying to get everybody on the same, to have the same kind of opportunity, on the same access to opportunities, is something that everybody has to work on. And I think that as social entrepreneurs or aspiring social entrepreneurs, we have to really work on. And yeah, as the other questions, I don't know if somebody else from my group wants to get on that, or.
We were also discussing that we can describe and explain our vision of the world by giving an example, or a lot of examples, because our example can teach someone else, and it can expand their vision, and we can all learn together. And by doing this, we are always going to learn and keep learning. And yeah. Come.
Who else from that team would like to add anything?
Well, we also, about what we teach, we first start off saying that we have to be in the position that, yes, we're going to teach about what we learn and our experiences, but we always have to be able to listen and to learn from what the other person is telling, because they also have experiences that are super valid. And as happened in this program, that we all learn from each other, and many of us come from the same country, but we all have different perceptions about different problems. And then we realized that some big companies are too bureaucratic to do good change. So we also thought that it's important to take in the context that an enterprise works in. For example, the historic and economic and social aspects that make a company what it is. And also that it is within every company, the social responsibility, even if it isn't the core objective of the company, it is really part of it, because they're always race and gender and equality and economy and history and culture. So we usually all move in the same realm. It's just that some companies pay more attention to it than others. And we should work towards making social responsibility a core concept of what a company is.
Okay. Any questions for that team or any other additions? Who else was in your team? You had 4 people?
Yes, Rick. I would like to add, in agreement to what Anna said, that we can't expect magic solutions for people from people who are in need. I mean, if you haven't sorted out your situation and you don't have figured out how to solve your own needs, we can't expect that people to solve all the problems in the world. So I believe if we want more ideas, if we want more entrepreneurs, we have to um, to maintain a level in which most of the people in our communities have solved their basic needs so they can really care and focus on helping others.
Okay, excellent addition. Any questions or additions for that team? Great stuff. Who's in the next? Who's the next team? Ah, a hand goes up. Yes.
Yeah, so I was with Victoria, with Paula, and also with Sara. And we understood like a lot of things. Firstly, we agree with Anna and her definition and her group's definition on like opportunity and how it's deeply related to choice. And we understood it as deeply related as well to freedom, because freedom is related to choice. And if you are choosing something, that means you're free to choose. And if you're not free to choose, then you're not choosing, you're conditioned to take a certain path in life. So that was really important to us. Also, related to the question on like, how would you explain the world to someone, or what would you take into account? We understood that it was important also to understand that we need to acknowledge our responsibility, or individual responsibility, but understand also that collectively we go further and we go beyond like a lot of the limits that we imagine that there are in the world. So collectively we achieve more, we get more. But we also need to acknowledge our responsibility, our individual responsibility on not creating obstacles for other people and their life paths, and also acknowledging that we need to work actively on abolishing all those obstacles that have been created historically due to the power dynamics that have been held historically in life. And we also understood that related to the question of problem, challenge, and social entrepreneurship, we understood that it was important to understand that when you have a problem, the challenge is to overcome that problem. And social entrepreneurship actually tackles like both problems that are the main problems in general, which are matters of inclusion and matters of like the economy, so like money problems. And so social entrepreneurship actually tackles both, and it shows us that you can have like you don't have to have competing interests with everybody. You can actually achieve your own desires and your own life projects and your own ideas by also helping others and being socially responsible. So that's it.
Oh, excellent. Very impassioned. I like the temperature of your presentation and discussion. That's good. What would anybody add to that? Any other additions from that team? So so far, all 3 teams have used words like responsibility, obligation, or some sort of a moral sensibility, understanding that there are limits to what you can do, but still feeling like when you go home, you want to be able to take what you've learned and figure out how to apply it, because you do want change. You do want to see things move in certain directions. Am I getting a good summary in here? What's the 4th team?
I think that one thing that we can add, because we agree with all about what you say, is that here we learn a lot to, connections, about relationships, networks, and how we can learn from each other about social inequities in Latin America, but meeting the new perspective of the other countries. And that's very valuable, because maybe in the future we can create, like a program or something to help our communities, but together it's easier. So I think that that's a big point of this program, the shared leadership between and among others.
Okay, so you've added a key word here, leadership, and I failed to pick up on something that came up earlier, which was the concept of collaboration. So you're introducing some very key words into the language of our discussion and some key concepts, and I want you to keep those on your mind because we're going to come back to that. Camelia, you had your hand up first.
Yes, I was just thinking about what we said earlier with Anna when you asked her about who has the opportunities, and I was just thinking that it is true that many of us are way more privileged than others, and we do have to acknowledge that. But we also, I think it's important that we don't go back to our countries and just thinking that only a few people have opportunities, because the truth is we all do so much with so little, and many of us actually do come from places of poverty, or maybe that we were in, I don't know, the best institution of education or stuff like that, and we still made some big changes in our communities. So it is so important to acknowledge the privilege, but it's also really important to realize that we all have this enormous potential to change. And now that we all know each other, I'm sure that this networking is going to be great for professional and personal futures.
I really like that because I was going to come back to that question about privilege, and you nailed it. That was exactly what I was hoping to get covered. And one more hand is up. Yes, Sebastian.
I guess the thing we talked about in our group the most was how valuable it is to have different perspectives in relation to the program, how much it broadened our conception of what it means to have something that's right. It develops your sense of right and wrong. I got that from the many lessons about how the laws in the United States came about, how there's a different context, and you can't expect the laws to uphold a social order that's beneficial for all. You have to be questioning. You have to question what was the context in which these things were made of, and how you want to envision a future community, not even a country, not even a town, just your local community. What would you like to change? What would you want to be different in some place in the future? Not now, not today.
Right. That's a key element in what we hope that you would be thinking about, which is what is your vision, and how do you have that vision guide you in the choices that you make as you go out into the world. Key components here. Any other additions to this? So we've heard from 4 groups. So there's like one more team of people we haven't heard from.
Yeah, I think it was my group. So I think we basically talked about opportunity as a chance to do something. If someone or something gives you resources, so you have a chance to use these resources to make something out of it. So for us, this is opportunity. In addition to what the other groups said, of course. And about the program and like about what we could teach of social entrepreneurship and problems and challenges, we basically discussed about the ways of solving problems and how it changes based on your personality and how you have to adaptate the ways you're solving a problem to your way of behaving and the things you like to do. Because last night we made some work with different ways of solving problems based if you're like an introverted or an extroverted. And basically this was something really important for us. Like
solving the problem really based on how you feel comfortable doing it. Yeah, I think that's it.
So you focused in on your personal attributes and your own psychology and your own attitudes, right?
Yeah, because for us, basically what we discussed was that you really have to know yourself to know how you could better, you could like find a better way to solve a problem. Because if you're an introverted, like you wouldn't, I don't know, make a public speech because it wouldn't work for you. So you have different ways of solving based on your own personality.
Yes, that's true. Can those things change? How much control, how much authority do you have over those resources that give you opportunities? It's interesting. I wish Rick Plout was here. He would tell you some funny stories about himself. Rick Plout, when I first met Rick Plout, he was terrified of speaking. He could never have met with you. He told me that when he would get up in front of an audience of any size, could be 5 people, could be 1,000 people, it didn't matter to him. If he got in front of other people to speak, he would literally get so frightened that he would go blind. He could not see anybody in front of him. And it took him a while, it took him practice to learn how to be able to talk with other people and be public. And he's now very successful at it. He's very good. He's a great teacher and a great speaker. So one of the things that we discover, and you've heard this over the last 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks, is we hear all about limitations and constraints and inequalities and problems. And at the same time, you're being challenged to go back out into the world and make change. So you have to understand yourself. I think that's an absolutely astute observation, but you also have to understand what you can change, what's flexible, what can be different than it is, and what can you do for yourself and for the world around you to make it different than it is. So what do you think about this thing about opportunities? Do you make them or do you stumble across them? Any thoughts about that? Can you create an opportunity? Looks like Anna's going. Yeah.
Sorry, Anna, go.
No, go, Galia, go.
No, I was thinking that it's a little bit of both. You stumble upon an opportunity, and that's part of privilege. But you also create with what you have. You can create your own opportunities, and that's not saying that people are in situations because they want to be in those difficult situations and because they are not creating their own opportunities. That's just saying that sometimes with what you have, it's enough to create your own opportunities. So yeah.
Okay. And Anna, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say almost the same, that you have both. Sometimes you are just like walking into somewhere and someone pops in and tell you, hey, this is this, you can do this. And then you said, okay, yeah. And before you have noticed it, you are in the middle of something, doing something, changing things, solving problems, and you do not even know how you ended that place. That happens. I think that I'm sure that for most of us, like that happened. For example, Susie, I was not looking for it. It appeared on an Instagram story of another person that I was not searching for it. It appears. It was an opportunity that appears and I decided to take it. But some other times you have the problem and you create the opportunity. Like I said, I realized there is this problem and what can I do? And then you create the opportunity. I think that I think.
Excellent. What others, you agree with him? That is some combination of the two and you learn to take advantage of it? So yes, Camille, you have your hand up.
Yes, I think you can find and create your own opportunities all the time because things can always be better. So it's if you're creative enough, you can find opportunities everywhere.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what does it take to create opportunities after you've listened to all of us talking at you for the last 3 weeks? Like what does it take? Do you have to have certain elements? So you've used the word privilege, and I'm assuming that means you've got certain resources that other people don't have. Like we've talked about things in the past of access to capital. You haven't declared bankruptcy. You're not in court. You're not in jail. So you have certain privileges. But what else do you need to make an opportunity turn into something fruitful? Yeah, Octavia.
I believe, Rick, that we first need the knowledge to understand the opportunity. Someone once said, the one who best describes the problem is the one most likely to solve it. And apart from that, well, you need the action. You need to start doing something. You need the movement.
So it may not actually take that much, right? You need some knowledge, and you need to have the willingness to take action, to make a decision and take action. Yes, I have another hand up.
I think it was me. I was thinking about time. You also need time to do certain things because you might have the will and you might have the information, but if you're too busy working to maintain a family, for example, or too busy doing whatever you have to do, sometimes willingness or like the will and having information is not enough. So I think time is also necessary, but also time is money. So we should be careful about time as well.
So time is a key resource, right? You need to have that as part of the toolkit, right? To take advantage of an opportunity. So you need to have a lot of stuff. What are the things that could go wrong? What are the risks? Have we talked about risks? Can you have all the opportunity in the world? You have resources, you've collaborated, you're learning to be leaders, and you are all now leaders. What could go wrong? Yes, Anna.
A lot of things can go wrong depending on what you are doing. But I think that when you're thinking of that, it's crucial what Rick Blood told us about thinking what is going to kill your company before it does. But I think that what you can lose must always be something that you can lose, not something that will kind of wound you. And that's something that you have to be kind of clear, or else you will be taking a big risk.
Octavio.
Yeah, I believe that we always think of the risk of the thing we are doing, but we never consider the risk of not doing nothing.
So what can you do about the risks? How do you address risk? So that's how I want to close our conversation. I'm going to share my screen once more. And I'm showing you a very simplified risk analysis chart. So all of us have opportunities, and all of us have some level of resource. We all have strengths. Even if we're not wealthy, we have strength. We have intellectual strength. We might have physical strength. We have imagination capabilities, and we all have some weaknesses. There's things that we don't know how to do. There's knowledge that we lack. And as we confront a certain situation or problem, we may not have the knowledge to address it completely. In addition to that, outside of us, in the outside world, there are threats to us. COVID, the pandemic, was a threat, right? It disrupted all kinds of opportunities and took us all off track. A flood, a tornado, an earthquake, all of these things are forces outside our control, and they present risks to us. But there's all the other risks. There's the risk of the world itself, the economics, the society, people's attitudes. So what would you do with that? So what we're looking at is a really simplified chart. And this is something that a lot of this is something that was very, very common to businesses around the world. And you first arrive at this very simple formula. Risk equals the likelihood of something happening and the cost of it happening. So cost times probability equals risk. That's if you want to get really technical and you're an economist like I am and you want to measure stuff, you end up with these kinds of formulas, but it's kind of instructive because it tells us that something that's not even likely or very little likelihood of happening, but has a high cost if it does happen, is still something we have to be attentive to. And we have to do something to prepare ourselves just in case that happens. Because if we're unprepared, the cost would be daunting or might even be catastrophic. And I'll bring up the pandemic again. The COVID virus was unique in that we haven't confronted it before, but we have been talking worldwide about what happens if there's ever going to be a virus that attacks our health on a global scale. And the first major publication and analysis of that happened over 30 years ago. So 28 years before COVID hit, there were people already warning us to get prepared, and nobody listened, or very few people listened. So here was something that seemed like no possibility, very little likelihood. And so we ignored it, even though the cost of it, when it did happen, was enormous. So it's really important when you're thinking about opportunities and you're thinking about things you want to change in the world, to spend time thinking about what the risks might be and how do you get prepared to address them, especially in the role that you will play as leaders, because other people will be depending on you to help guide them through those very difficult situations. So that's the last piece I wanted to cover. And I wanted to finally ask you, you get done with SUSE, you go home, there's things for you to do, issues to address, and you have risks in front of you. What's your plan? How will you take what you've just been doing for the past 3 weeks and go be a leader and social entrepreneur? Anybody? What's your plan of action now? Did you think about it before you applied to SUSE? Like why did you want to go? Why did you want to take advantage of this opportunity? Yes, Anna.
Well, I've been thinking like a lot of things during these weeks. First, I will go back to the NGO that I'm working with, and well, I am in charge of funding, so I will lose a lot of what we learn about finding investors and fundraising money for them. I was also planning to start a fundraising for a campaign that my university is doing, that they tried a crowdfunding at the first of the year, but it was awful. They collect almost nothing. So I would like to help now that I know more. And something I bring to the online course that now is like a long-term project that the people that is with me they liked it, and maybe we will continue it after the online course. like an Instagram or a blog post or a Facebook page to connect the students with opportunities like SUSI, like scholarships, like Olympics for high school students. And that's almost some things that are on the path between all the things that pass through my head. And well, maybe then you will listen more, but for now, those are the three that remains. The three
That
main
sounds
ones.
great. That sounds really excellent. Who else? What are the other plans of action?
Well, for instance, and talking and to keep talking like about opportunities. After this program, I certainly have like a lot of tools to identify new opportunities. And what like most caught my attention was that this idea that we can have like a business, a very profitable business, but with a social focus. That really caught my attention, and I will try to work more on that because I believe there are many opportunities today to have a great social impact, but also have a sustainable, a self-sustainable and profitable business. Yeah.
Excellent. I like that. Other plans, other thoughts when you get home. Well, okay. Another hand up.
Okay,
Follow.
for me, it's very interesting to connect the bottom now analysis and top down analysis, because I'm in Brazil. We in business we look for top down analysis. So we look at the environment first, and after we look the inside the organization. So here we can connect both. Look at the macro environment and micro environment. And for me, it's very important looking Latin American itself, because in Brazil we look back. We don't look too much for Latin America. We look more Europe and US itself. So it's very nice to look other realities in Latin America, understand more about Latin America and about Brazil too.
Love it. I love it. Broaden perspective. Any other thoughts about what happens next? What do you want to do with what you've been learning? How many? I like the thing about knowing yourself too. So here's another question. We can just do this by a show of hands. How many people here would describe yourself as an introvert? Anybody here describe themselves? I would describe myself. I'm a very extreme introvert. Does that surprise anybody? Marina, you're an introvert also. I like that. I see some hands up. So you all know President Obama, who had been president of the United States. You familiar with that person, that name? Yes. Obama is also considered to be, and he himself would describe himself as an extreme introvert. So what does that mean? An introvert in such a leadership position in front of people all the time. Does that surprise any of you? What does it mean to know yourself and then put yourself into different situations? What is this suggesting?
Oh, sorry, God.
No,
No, I'll go next.
He had to develop himself to achieve the things he wanted to.
He developed himself. He picked out parts of his personality and developed those forward. Okay, that's a great point. And yeah, Gali, you were about to say something too.
Yeah, I was about to say like almost the same thing. It's like knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses, because you can be an introvert but also very good at leading people, because you're interacting with them in a different way. So it's really interesting to know your strengths and use them at their best.
Great. Yes, Camelia.
Yes, I read a study that was published last year from Ethic magazine, and it's exactly what Galia said. Like it was proven in like 43 enterprises that the study analyzed that the introvert leaders were better leaders than the extrovert because they were better listeners. Like they knew to put everyone else first. It was a different managing style. And it's very interesting because we always tend to think like the people who are camera friendly and like to speak up and everything are better to lead just because it's easier for us to listen to them. And it's not always the case. Like we all have a very good leader in all of us, no matter if we're introvert or not.
Very good. Yes, I like what I'm hearing. So part of why I'm bringing that up is this notion about knowing yourself is not something that we've studied much of during doing SUSE, but clearly the individual, that's you, each one of you, your self-knowledge is a driving force in what you now go do. So it's not just all the stuff that gets poured into you. It's not all the stuff that you learn or you research or you read about, but it's also who you are and then what you do with who you are. You have your walking resources and walking assets to yourselves. And what you do with those resources and those assets will determine where you go in life and how far you can take things. So that's an essential element. We teach a course at Mount Holyoke called Individuals and Organizations, and we emphasize this aspect a lot. Who plays what role? Like, what do you like to play? Do you like to be the leader of the group, or do you like to be a participant? If you were on a boat, if you were sailing, would you be happy to be working the rigging, or do you feel like you have to be the captain? And it's a question of just being honest with yourself, right? Like what do you enjoy? How do you feel whole? When do you feel at your best? So those are essential parts that make all the other things that we've been studying and talking about come together for you. And each one of you then has a particular way of being effective and successful. So that's an exciting prospect. I see that a couple of things have happened while I've been talking. One is I see that Mark has joined us, and we're getting close to the point where we're going to do our weekend review. So I want to know if there are any final comments or questions from any of you about anything that we've gone over in the last 3 weeks. Wide open. Anything you want to ask about, talk about, highlight. Octavia, I'm disappointed. I thought, oh, okay, I see a hand up. 2 hands up. There we go. Yes.
So maybe the highlighting the importance of acknowledging or recognizing that we are all leaders and that we can all be leaders, and that leading is very, very fun, but it carries a lot of responsibility. But I believe that we can all do it in our own communities, and yeah.
Like it. Yes. Octavio.
No, I would like to highlight the fact that, for instance, at secondary school, I was that guy that used to do the practice works and all the stuff by himself, right? I always like to do the things by myself. I didn't like to work in groups and stuff. I changed a bit when I started college, but certainly this course that we have had during these 3 weeks has changed my perspective totally. I have learned to listen more to others, to participate, and to find my spot. Maybe in some groups I could be the leader, and in others I have to stay aside because someone took the lead. But I believe that versatility is very important and will be very important for our future, professional future.
Wonderful. Fabulous. Yes. Any other? Well, I think we are ready to make a transition, and all I can say in closing is know yourself.